Kumlan Ablak Gemara. Today's daf for Wednesday is daf Yud Amid Aleph. We are up to the two dots. So we're going through the different methods of Kiddushin. One was through Kesef, by giving money, and one is Shtar, which we just finished learning, and now the third one is through Bia, intimacy. So there are a number of stages in intimacy. And the question is it the start of intimacy or the completion? Ilas bia koina, oisoiv bia koina. Is it the beginning of bia that actually is the kinyan, or is it when you consummate at the end? Oisoiv bia can either mean consummate or can mean just when you final penetration. So nav kamina, what is the difference? What do we need to know? You start and you finish. So why do we have to know whether it happened at the beginning, it happened towards the end? Because there are two nafkaminas in theory. Kigoyim, for example, Sheheraba, he started with her, and then and then in the interim, she stretched out her hand and accepted Kiddushin from somebody else. Or even if, let's say, didn't continue any further, and you asked, she accepted Kiddushin from somebody else. Is she already considered married to the first person? Therefore, the second Kiddushin is meaningless. Or no, she is married to the second person, engaged to the second person. Inami, another Afkamina is the Kohen Gadol. Kohen Gadol, the Torah says, can only marry a psula, someone who is a virgin. And the question is whether Kohen Gadol can actually marry a girl or betroth a girl through Bia. The Kokoni psula bebia. If he was Kohen with Bia, or can he marry with Bia? Because if it's, let's say, the Tchilas Bia, that's Kohen, it's not a problem. But if it's the end of Bia, that's Kohen, that means she's already a Ba'ula. By the time you're ready to be koina, but your kohen gadol can only get engaged to a psula. So therefore, we need to know what stage. What stage does the bia take effect for Kiddushin? Amar Meimah says, Kol haboyel daita agamar bia. Generally speaking, when a person kavana plays an important role here, and the kavana is for the conclusion. So therefore, if you learn Gemara literally, that the bia is not koina until the very end, and therefore a kohen gadol cannot get engaged or grow through bia because she'll be a bula from the start, but they won't be engaged until the end when she's already bula, and that's forbidden. And the same thing is if she accepts somebody else, that would be a valid acceptance. However, Taisus comes along and asks that there's another Gemara Yavamas where clearly says that ha'ara, that we learn out from other arroys that even hara, that means like the beginning of bia is already considered Kiddushin. So what's going on there? How can our Gemara say it's only the conclusion when the Gemara that clearly says it's the beginning? So Taisus gives four answers. The one answer is that it depends. If he stops right after hara, that demonstrates he wanted the hara to be the Kiddushin. But if he continues to the end, that demonstrates that his kavanah was that the Kiddushin should not be valid until they finish. So if he only did the beginning, and that means he wanted to be Kiddushin, if he then accepted Kiddushin with somebody else, then the Gemara Yavama says it's meaningless. Or by a Kohen Gadol, they're engaged. It's only if he continued to the end that a Kohen Gadol can't do that. Or if she accepted Kiddushin in the middle, that's a problem. The third answer in Taisus Rabbeinu Tam, that he says that after the Gemara there established that even hara, the beginning of bia, is already considered kinyan. So when we use the word bia, we actually mean hara, and within hara itself, there's the beginning of it, and then the final penetration, not the consummation of penetration. And the Rabbeinu Nissim, the fourth answer, he said it's the Gemara Yavamas is talking about first you did Kiddushin and then you did bia. So then bia, of course, there we say that the Tchilas bia is the marriage. In our Gemara here, we're talking about that there's nothing before just Kiddushin. And therefore we say that it has to be the Gemara bia that makes the Kiddushin. Okay, next Gemara. When we say over here that bia is one of the three ways that a person can get engaged to a woman, if he has bia with her and he has intention that this should not only be the Kiddushin, but this should also be the Suyin, can the one act of bia cover both stages or not? Need a separate bia for that. Says Gemara. Says the Gemara, Iboilu bia nesuyin oises, or the right in the middle of the page. Bia and the suyin oisa does bia also accomplish Nisuyin or Eidish and Isa. Bia can only cover one stage at a time. Nafkamina, what's the difference? And the Gemara will point out a number of differences, whether it only covers stage one or it covers stage two as well, which is very difficult to understand what the Gemara actually means here, because the difference is whether she's engaged or she's married. So what the Gemara really is going to spell out is what's the difference if a woman is engaged or a woman is married? Which then you have to wonder, why does this follow on this question? I mean, that's from the beginning. We want to know there's two stages: there's engagement, there's marriage. And yet the Gemara here sort of does it an indirect way. So we're going to make a number. We don't cover all the differences, but we cover a number of differences. So, for example, only when they're married does she inherit her the Tamil. If he's a kohen, only if they're married does he go to her funeral. Only if they're married, if she makes the dharm, does he have the right to annul it unilaterally. But if you say that it's Nisuyin, then Yersha, then he does Yashin her, Metamalo, Mefndera. He can do all those things. The Amrit Edis and Isabia only is limited to Kiddushin, then like any other Kiddushin, Ainu Yersha, he does not inherit it. Ainu Metamalo, he does, if he's a Kohen, does not go to a funeral. The Ainu Mefndera cannot annul her Nedarim on his own, he has to do it together with her father. What's the din? Omar Abai says Abai, if she's married. So the Abai, Toshma coming here. It says in the Braisa of Zakai, so Abai is going to say that L'chayda it only does one thing. It says Ha'av Zakai B'Bitay. Father has rights to his young daughter, B'Kedusha, that he can marry her off, B'Keser Shtarbi, all the three formats, including B here as well. Then Zakai B'Mitziyah, if he finds anything, it goes to the father. Might see there any earnings. U'B'Haforas Nidoreh, he has the right to annul her Nidorim, the father. U'Mekabel as Gita, if she gets engaged, the father can then receive her get. Taisus here has a suffix, Ketana, if she got married, does the father receive her get, but now she's totally independent, that she herself receives her own get. He concludes that the father no longer has any rights over her. If she inherits anything, the father has no rights to it. Nisas, but if she got married, so we already talked about engage, and now we're saying, but if she goes to the next step, if she gets married, yes or about the husband has one addition over the father, that if she inherits anything, he has the rights to the dividends because he'll be working on it. So Ketani Bia starts out the first section of the Braisa talks about that they had Bia, and yet Ketani says Nisas, they got married afterwards. So we see clearly from here that Bia itself does not, the intimacy does only gets them engaged, not married. Says the Gemara, that's no proof. They say to Abaye, that's not really a proof. Kiktani nisas ashara. The nisas is if you went to the Kesef Shtar, then you have to have another stage. But perhaps Bia covers both stages. No proof one way or another. But Abaye holds that Bia only does Kiddushin. Omar Rava will hold just like Abaye, that Bia only does Kiddushin. He brings another proof. Toshma coming here, Bashal Shayimech, like 3-year-old girl, they hold. Then Miskadesh Bia. We say that she's old enough that she can be Mekudesh through Bia, and we recognize that marriage, that if a Yavam, let's say her husband died childless, and the brother-in-law comes along, if the father married off, she's married Mataita, then Kana, he's married to her now. And if anybody, if she commits infidelity, then she was not liable because she's underage, but everybody else will be liable. That's what Rashi learns. Teitz learns Chayav means that if a Yavam married her, she's now considered a fully married woman, even though she's only 3 years old plus. And they will be treated as if whoever committed the sin will be treated as if he was committing adultery with a married woman. Umetama is boilam, and if she was a nida, and a nida at the time while she's a nida, she's tamei, and if she's, let's say, lying on 10 mattresses, and she's lying atop the top mattress, the bottom mattress has the same status as the top mattress. If she was a nida when they had relations, intimacy, then he also becomes a very high level of tumah. That if he's lying on a top mattress, the bottom mattress becomes tummy, but not to the extent that if somebody else touches it becomes tummy, but food and drink becomes tummy. Metam is boyalo, the tummy mishka kachvikelia. That is metame, the top bed and the bottom bed. V'im nisas lekoin. If she married a kohen, a chelet betruma, she can eat truma because she's considered fully married. V'im boala echad mekolaroisha betayda. Any one of that's forbidden to her as a relative has any relation with her, mumsin al yada, and even though she won't get killed, they will die. They will die because they committed a sin. And not like Rabbi Yeshua said yesterday that only that both committed a sin. But like Rabbi Yeshua, one of them committed a sin, even though the other person is not liable, that person will be punished on the full weight of the law. Now, it says here, if she had let's say even a one-off event with somebody that she cannot marry. So therefore, it passes on kuna and the children halal. Tani. So now, what do we see in the Braisa? Tani bia starts with talking about bia, and then Tani nisas, and then says if she got married to a kohen. So we see that bia itself does not perform the marriage, only betrothal. If you did bia as kedushin. Says the Gemara again to Rava, just like we said to Abaya, no proof, we can say to you the same thing. Hachi kamar. If that no bia maybe covers both, and now we're saying, and if that you happen to have bia with a man who's a kohen, Nino Eichele Betruma, she has the right to eat truma because she's considered fully married matter. Toshma coming here. We have a Braise Kvar Sholach Yechanan ben Bagbag. Ben Bagbag or Ben Hey with the same person because Bag Bay Gimel is 5 and Hey. So sometimes it's called Ben Bagbag, sometimes it's called Ben Hey. And some say the reason why the Geir is called Ben Bagbag, Ben Hey because Abraham became Abraham. And he's the father of all the nations. So the Hey represents that he is a son of Abraham, like every Geir, directly son from Abraham. And so his son Yech sent a letter to Rabbi Yehuda ben Seder, in the Tzivin. We had the beginning of Psachon, Rabbi Yehuda ben Seder lived in the Tzivin. And therefore he wasn't Oile Regel. Shamaiti Elech, I heard to say about you, Sha'ata Oima, you say Arusa Bas Yisrael, that a Jewish girl who was married to a kohen, not married, but engaged, is entitled to eat truma. Before we continue, generally speaking, we say that we concluded that a Mahatayda, a Bas Yisrael, as soon as she gets engaged to a kohen, can eat truma. But Rabbana came along and said that they cannot. We gave 2 reasons, and there's a Mishnah Rishain, a Mishnah Achrein. The 2 reasons were either because of simpling. What happens if he finds that she has certain defects and he wants to know the entire marriage? So therefore, she'd be eating truma. Turn out to be she's never married to the kohen. So wait till they actually get married, or because of not because of simpling, but because she's still living at home, because only engaged, and she might offer some of that food of truma to her family. Those 2 reasons. So now we have a discussion between Rabbi Yehuda ben Seder and Yechon ben Bagbag. The letter that Yechon ben Bagbag sent to Rabbi Yehuda was as follows. Shemaitel, I heard say about you. You say Arusa Bas Yisrael Echel Truma. That a girl is engaged can eat truma. That's I heard. How can I be? Shalach lo. Yehudim say let's send back to him. But and we're going to try to glean from this conversation here what the effect of B is if you're doing it to get engaged. Is it merely limited to engagement, or it actually also incorporates marriage as well with this one act? So let's see the conversation that they had. He said to me, don't you, Yehudim say to send back a letter to Yechon ben Bagbag, and you don't agree? But I understood and I assume that you know every recess of Torah, including to make a kavachemer. And I'm going to show you that Bia, in fact, can enable a woman by Edison to go ahead and to eat truma. It goes as follows. Don't you know? As follows. When it comes to Shivcha Knanis, if a master wants to acquire it, Bia won't help at all to acquire as a Shivcha. Yet Kesef does, which tells us that Kesef is more powerful than Bia. Bia will not affect she's not considered a Shivcha, so therefore even if her master's a Kohen, she won't be able to eat Truma. Yet Kasper Machilta. If the master bought her with money, she can eat. But Truma, Zu should be also Machilta Truma, so a woman, if she gets related to her husband through Bia, we're not sure. At this juncture, we are not sure. Are we talking about Kiddushin or we're talking about Nasuin? But the fact is that Bia entitles her to eat truma if she's marrying a kohen. Then surely Kaspa, which is more powerful because it's effective even by a maid, machil to truma, allow to eat truma. What should I do? The rabbi stepped in and they said, we don't want a woman who's engaged to a kohen to eat truma yet, and we'll still see why. Let's understand the Bia over here. What is the role of Bia? Is it here for Nisuyin? Is it here for Kiddushin? And what exactly was its effect? Heichidam, what are we talking about? That they had a chuppah, they had them be, in other words, that this beer is from the sake of marriage, then the kesef. And the case of money. Now, money can only be an engagement. But then after the money, you also did chuppah. In other words, in both cases, you got married. So then, so what do you tell me that by beer you can eat and by money we need to learn now that you can eat? Of course you can eat. It's the same thing. Both cases, you got married. What's the difference? Once she's married to Kohen, she's allowed to eat truma. The other we're talking about obviously beer beer. We're trying to learn that money affects enables her to eat truma, and we're learning it from beer. So we're talking about why does beer enable her to eat truma more than money? Because beer probably is talking about marriage, consummating the marriage. Beer was beer together with chuppah, and kesef, and we're trying to learn out money. You're only engaged. And since beer can kesef is more powerful than beer, then surely kesef should also enable her to eat truma. Now it doesn't make sense. What's the kavachemen? In the case of beer, there was a chuppah, and beer, in other words, she's fully married. But they only had one stage, so why should she be able to eat truma? Elalab must be talking about that beer and kesef are on par, and yet beer she is unable to eat truma, and therefore we say surely money also. What do you mean on par? The beer shaloi aidichup. We're talking about beer on its own, solo, nothing else, and the kesef shaloi aidichup, and money on its own, and therefore since beer enables the titles to eat truma, so too money. No, how do you know the beer entitled to truma if all you did was kedushin? I said, if you tell me that the beer that you use for kedushin also incorporates that one act, also consummates the marriage. Therefore, we'll look beer, one act of beer entitles her to eat truma, engage in marriage both at the same time. So money also entitles her to eat truma because money is more powerful than beer. We see by an Amanavriyah, she cannot be acquired through beer, but she can be acquired through money. Beer is throwing a kesef. If all beer does is kedushin, then how do you know that beer entitles to truma that you make a kavachemen? Why is it by beer so convinced that definitely she can eat truma? By money, we have to learn that out from there. We're going to have two answers in the Gemara. So that's another proof that we want to bring. Comes along the Gemara and says, maybe I can reject that proof as well. And that is, I can argue that beer on its own does not consummate marriage, merely kedushin. So what's going on here? We're talking about beer de chuppah. We're talking about beer together with chuppah. In other words, a full, the kedushin, and then beer as a nisuyin, and entirely truma. So you're asking a question. So what are you trying to learn? Kesef? Kesef is only the first stage. The kesef shalai de chuppah. And we're going to put all that into the Kavuchim as follows. With the Ahmed, you said, Hocha Tarti by Bia, there are two steps. And the Hocha Chod by Ketchup is one step. So how can you one from another? I'll tell you. Kavuchim and Meis is the same Kavuchim. The Hochi, Sholach Lei, this is what he sent him. This is what Yehudim say, they sent back to Rabbi Yechim and Bagba. Uma Shivcha Knanis. When it comes to a Shivcha Knanis, She'ein Biyasa Machil to Betrumim. If you have beer there, by a shivcha, even if you went through both stages, the master does not have any ownership over her, and she cannot eat truma. And even if he had in mind to marry her, she's a goy, cannot, and therefore there's no marriage. Even though you did both stages, so and yet when it comes to an amr, kaspa on one stage, all you did was gave money. She's entitled to truma. Can you kaspa? So zu over here when it comes to a relationship, shibiyasa machil to truma. That through intimacy, even though it's with chuppah, beer on its own would not consummate marriage, merely engagement. But beer with chuppah is a full marriage, but nevertheless, definitely can eat truma. So surely kesef on its own, which is so powerful that it works by an amr, surely entitles her to eat truma. Surely she can't machil to truma below chuppah, that the money will not entitle her to eat truma without chuppah. My answer, what should I do? The rabbi said, Arusa Basisol, the Truma Jewish Basisol should not eat Truma while she's engaged, until she actually gets married, from the Ula because of Ula. And Ula is a what? We're scared that if you send the food to her, she'll pass it on to the parents. I mean, even if he gives money, even if the 12 months expire when he has to get married, if he did not yet bring her to the chuppah, she's still living at home, we don't want you to send anything here. But if the reason is because of simping, because of mumim, after 12 months, when they're definitely going to get married, it's a question of time. We believe that he rated all the investigations and is happy to get married, and he won't try to annul the marriage. Ben Bagbag. So what's Ben Bagbag going to respond? That's a good point. Then Bagbag is going to say you cannot compare a woman to the case of Shifcha. Why not? Gabe Shivcha Kanan is Loy Shai B'Kinyona. If that legal obligation there when it comes to a Shivcha, that's all there is to do. There's money and nothing else to happen. Hocha Shai B'Kinyona over here, when if money change hands, that's only the first step. There's still another step to be done. So why do you think you can eat from after the first step? You got to wait to do both steps. Over there by Omer, there's no other steps. That's it. You have there's a relationship there. But when it comes to Kiddushin, there are two steps, Kiddushin and Nisuyin. Since you only need Kiddushin, you cannot eat Truma. It has nothing to do, they're totally unrelated. That's one version. Ravina is going to say that everyone agrees that Mahatayla, she's entitled to eat Truma, including Yechim and Bagbaka. So what's going on here? Mahatayla, definitely you can eat. That and could be that Bia does only Edison, and Edison entitles a woman to eat Truma as well. Mahatayla, according to everybody. The whole letter of Yechim and Bagbab is based on the Rabban, and he wants it as follows. I heard and I thought that sounds like even with the Rabbanon. Aren't you worried about simpon? Simpon are the word simpon means to annul something, to break something. That he'll later on say, "Oh, I didn't realize you have all of these flaws, and now I want to know the entire condition retrospectively." So he said, "How can you say that you can eat truma? What about simpon?" Shalach, he sent back to Rabbi Yochanan. Rabbi Yochanan say that sent back to him. You don't agree with me that we're not worried about simpon? I'll prove it to you that we're not worried about simpon. Look at Amma. I thought that you are an expert in all the recesses of Taylor, leadership, use logic. Don't you know? When it comes to the Shifra Kananis, that Bia does not entitle her to eat truma with her master. Yet Kashkon Chilta, the master acquires her with money. Then what? Then she's considered that she's entitled to eat truma. Simple. Why aren't we worried that maybe afterwards we'll find some flaws and try to unravel the whole thing? We're not worried. So we see that worried about simple. Over here, with the Bia enables her to eat truma, which means it's easier to form a relationship. And surely we shouldn't be concerned about women. That money enables her to eat truma. So we're not worried about simple. Even so, with the Rabbana, she cannot eat for a different reason. For the reason of Ulin, that is, what should I do? A woman, a Basasol is engaged. Cannot eat truma. She gets married. Otherwise, she is going to share her food with the family members because she's still living at home, and she will pass them on truma. Says the Gemara, I knew Ben Bagbag. What's he going to say? How come when it comes to a maid, we're not worried about simpon? We can give her truma straight away. So Ben Bagbag says because when it comes to a maid, simpon is not an issue. Simpon, unless it doesn't an issue. Why? If it's an obvious mum and this person would have seen it and didn't care, so nothing. He can't change his mind later. So and he accepted it. Should say so maybe she has some defect that you wouldn't really know until you actually become intimate with her. She is there as a maid, not as your wife. So what if she has certain defects? Yeah, as long as it doesn't impact on her work to you, it doesn't matter. All you need is to work. Like what happened? You find out he's a ganav or kavustas, that he's a ganav or kavustas according to Rashi, is a kidnapper according to Rabbeinu Chananel, it's a gambler. You knew that before you started. When you invite an Eved to live into your house, you cannot trust the Eved. Why is he an Eved? Many times the Eved, even Eved Ivdi, because they stole the Nimkabing. And Eved Kanani, why is he a slave in the first place? Obviously, he did something wrong, and therefore you cannot trust him. So you know from the outset, you can't use that as an excuse. My Amrit, what are you going to say? Perhaps least to Mizuyan, that he is an armed bandit, a nichtel of Malchus, or that he's going to be executed by the Malchus. Well, Hanu Kol Islu, that everyone is aware of, and definitely you are aware of it as well, and you accepted it. Or Taisa says, because there's a coil, it's very rare that you have such people being sold on the slave market, because people generally know who's about to be executed. So Mechdi is a very simple question. At the end of the day, what was this whole discussion between Yibir? So when it comes to the discussion of Bia, whether it does Edison and Asuyin. The Gemara does bring a conclusion. Abai Barabba wants to say it only does Edison. The Gemara in the language of the Gemara says maybe no, maybe it does both, and we don't have a conclusion. But with the discussion between Rabbi Yehuda Meseda and Rabbi Yechim and Bagbag, they both at the end agree that with the Rabbanon she cannot eat truma. Matayla she could, as soon as she got engaged, with Rabbanon she can't. According to Bagbag, the reason is because of simple, because maybe you find some defects, you want to unravel the entire Kiddushin, and according to Rabbi Yehuda Meseda, it's because that she'll share with the rest of the family. At the end of the day, she cannot eat trumas. What are they arguing about? Mechti, bein lamar, whether you follow this opinion or that opinion, she cannot eat truma. My benayus. What's the argument? What are they arguing about? Saying about ikah benayus, no difference is kibel. Few differences. What happens? He said, I don't mind if she has any movement. So as far as Simpan is concerned, she can start eating truma because he said, I'll accept it. I won't try to unravel it. But as far as if she will share the truma with her family, it's still a worry that she should not be truma. Another one is masar, where Rashi learns is that the father gave her over to the shluchim of the husband. So therefore, she's no longer home. So there's no question of her sharing the truma with the rest. On the other hand, the husband hasn't yet seen her intimately, so that the movement might still be an issue. Or v'halach, or the shluchim of the father joined the shluchim of the husband. Again, there's no longer any family members there, so there's no issue of sharing, but there's still an issue of movement. Tastes like a little different shot, but most of halach is one. And I'll see you tomorrow, Mitzvah Shem. Have a good day.